everybody, and welcome to Music Career Radio. I'm your host, Nani Noam Vazana, and my guest this week is Klinghoffer, a musician, innovator, educator, and vice president of the Jerusalem Music Academy. Together, we'll dive into making a career as an independent musician and the importance of valuable education and mentoring on the way. As you know, all work on this podcast is done voluntarily, but we do collect donations to facilitate scholarships for independent musicians. So if you would like to gift the gift of education, please visit ydiymusic.com/donate and support us and many musicians that deserve better education. And you could also send a direct PayPal transfer to paypal.me/Noam Vazana. Hey, Michael, how are you doing?
Hello,
Hey.
nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Long time.
Long time, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. I still remember our first meeting.
Me too.
It was in a Tel Aviv Music Academy, and I left my trombone in one of the classes. And when I came to pick it up, you were teaching a class, well, a one-on-one lesson, double bass lessons. And before I even managed to say, hey, I want to pick up my trombone, you were like, would you like to study the double bass?
Correct. Right,
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah. So what made you ask me that question?
I guess I asked many people that question,
Really? Why?
but I don't know. Something made me ask the question, and you were going into the room very naturally. So I thought maybe.
I'll be natural in other things, maybe. I said yes, huh? So we then
Yes.
met later on the same day, and you gave me a
Yeah.
lesson, and I was like, "Wow, this is an awesome instrument," which helped me a lot with the instrumentation and orchestration later on, because you got to learn the instruments themselves before you can write for them.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't get that in the music academy when I was a student, and I completed my education in the vocal department, but I also did 1 year with conducting with Avner, our friend Avner Biron, and it was actually mind-boggling for me that we didn't really study orchestration as conductors. So I was like, yeah, how come that's
Well,
possible?
I think they do. I think you should, and I think they do
Yeah,
now.
they probably do now. I mean, it's been what, 15 years, 14
I
years?
guess so.
Yeah, something like that. So there have been some innovations in the field.
I've been here forever, so I don't know how many of them.
Are you a dinosaur?
Yeah, I'm a dinosaur.
You said that in one of our chats. Like I asked you something about social media, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm a dinosaur. I don't need to learn it." But I see you're doing very
Well,
well.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I had to learn it, and we all have to learn it.
Yeah. I read on your website that your goal as a teacher is to confuse your students.
Right.
What's that about?
It's about making them think. It's about we are used to the teaching method of I say you do, and I believe that whatever I do not say and the students discover on their own is better for them. And I like to be surprised, and I want them to be confused, and I want them to check things, and I want them to never believe me. I want them to find out and investigate everything I say.
Now I'm curious to study with you.
Mm.
Maybe we should do an online
Never
lesson.
too late. Never too late.
All right, I'll take you up on the offer. Well, generally, you are an all-round musician, right? So you play, you compose, you teach, you keep a close contact with your student board, also in the music academy. How does it feel to be on both sides of the coin, like all at once?
I think that's the biggest dilemma people have, and I've met many people in academia in general, and some people, we choose or are chosen to do administration as well, and to do, and we do teaching, and we do our own art. Um, it's a big dilemma. It's a big dilemma, but I think one thing nourishes the other things, and it's an ongoing cycle. And as long as you do things for the right reasons, then it manages. The basic secret is, I've conducted a musical once when I was a doctoral student. I was conducting musicals, and one of them was Barnum. They just made a film about him, about the father of the American circus. And just before the premiere, I had a television interview with one of the lead actors. And at the end, there was a question, what's the most important message from the play or something? I can't remember the question. And I just started singing the opening song. There is a sucker born every minute. but that's not the point. The point about Barnum, there's a song there where his wife does a lot of things for him, and she builds the circus museum, and she has a song there called One Thing at a Time. You can do everything as long as you do one thing at a time.
That's curious that you mentioned it, because I also have a song called One Thing at a Time, and I don't know that song. I want to hear it now. But like my song is inspired by
I'll see if
Dickinson.
see if we have a recording from that production, but we'll see.
Do you know this
I'll see.
poem by Emily Dickinson? She says that if she could save one heart, she feels like she hasn't lived in vain.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that sentence, I wrote an entire song, and that, like, saying, take it one thing at a time. If I could, I don't remember my own lyrics. One thing at a time. If I could stop one heart from dying, if I could ease one pain, and then I haven't lived in vain. That's the lyrics too.
She has another poem, Musicians Wrestle Everywhere.
It's not a poem, that's reality. I remember, especially in the Tel Aviv Music Academy, because I went to both, right? Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in Tel Aviv, the first year, I was invisible to most of the students. The teachers were like, I had a good relationship with the teachers. But the students, I felt like they looked at me as a competitor rather than a colleague. So I would pass by the whole way, and I would say hello to people. And they would be like, just continue to walk through, and they won't reply. And then the end of the first year, they publish, these lists of grades with the end of the year exams. And I wasn't even in the school when they published the results. And then my teacher, Micha Davis, called me. And he said, well, are you pleased about your grade? And I was like, I don't know, I haven't seen the grade. He said, well, why don't you go to the academy and check? So I went to the board, and I looked up for my ID number. And I was like, I saw this number there, and it was like higher by, 3 points or 4 points from all the other grades. And I was kind of surprised because, I felt like a nobody in the academy, and then I get this grade. And then the thing is that people were standing around that sheet of paper that was attached to the wall and asking each other. I heard them whispering, who is that number? Like, we don't know this number. Like, as if people even know each other by numbers, like, because all this competition that is going on, people know each other's ID numbers. I thought it was insane. And then from this moment on, sorry?
No, go on.
And then from this moment on, the same day, people started inviting me out for coffee. Would you like to play in our ensemble? Would you like to do this and that together? People who didn't speak to me for an entire year, affected by that number on the wall, all of a sudden asked me to do stuff. And I was like, hey, you're not really my friends.
But if you mention my biography, there's another important sentence there, that I cherish everything I cannot assign a number to.
What does that mean?
That I admire everything that you cannot put a number. Values that you cannot put a number next to it. Values, sunrise, beauty.
Yeah.
Those are the things, because I think we live in an era where if there is no number, then it doesn't exist. If you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And I like the non-measurable things. Actually, there is, you can see on my website, there's an article called Excellence in the Age of Ratings. And it starts with a festival of young groups in the South where you were actually a guest performer. I
Really?
remember that. I remember meeting you there. And it starts there. And there are a lot of thoughts, and there is a lot of talk there about psychology and Abraham Maslow. But you were there. But that's the side story. That's just the introduction,
That's the excuse.
about the festival. But that's one of the biggest mistakes, that we tend to assign numbers to everything. And there are things that you cannot. I mentioned there in the article, when I was in high school, our math teacher used to resolve a problem and fill up the entire blackboard with letters and numbers and letters and numbers. And then we had one genius guy in the class, and he would say, could we also demonstrate it like this? And he would write just one phrase, and everybody was, oh. So they both got to the same solution, but one is more elegant than the other. Can you put a number near the elegant? No, you can't. You just know it's there.
It's a feeling.
That's a feeling. It's not just a feeling, because everybody can see how elegant that solution was versus how straining the other solution was. So I like the things I cannot assign a number to.
So it's like assigning the Kodai method to your life. If you distill everything to the smallest elegant solution.
I think it's a combination of this and the Eastern the thought, Zen, and so on.
Are you into Eastern philosophy?
Well, I'm a Tai Chi practitioner for over 20 years, and I read a lot about Zen and Eastern philosophy, yes.
And the art of motorcycle making.
And the art of motorcycle, and the art of archery, and more and more. Yeah.
Do you do archery? That's fun.
I did some. You can't do everything, so I guess if we talk about career, that's one of the most important points, that we have to take care of our body, of our machine. So you can't do everything with our busy life, trying to manage a career and the school and the family, and so I mostly stick to at least one time a day meditation, 15-20 minutes, and I try to run 5 to 6 times a week, between 40 and 50 kilometers a week. So that's what I do. Between 40 and 50 kilometers a week. 5 to 6 times.
Good shape.
Trying.
That's admirable. I don't do that. I do some yoga and I do some Pilates at home, and I take walks, but I don't run. But I also have a bad knee, so I guess that explains it.
We'll talk about it later. I had a bad knee, and I fixed. That's good. In
That's
life or in real?
Well, now in Corona time, no, but before, yeah. Although it's not such a close contact sport, so they should allow it. But yeah. When I'm not on tour, of course, but that's another thing. Just from carrying stuff around on tour, you get pretty fit.
So you see, Tai Chi and running I can do when I'm on tour.
Yeah.
No problem.
But a lot of bass players that I know practice Tai Chi. Is that a bass player thing? Is that because it's such a ginormous instrument you have to carry around, so you feel you have to make your body flexible while you attend to it?
I don't know. I think it's keeping to the just necessary movement, There's a saying in Tai Chi: when my opponent doesn't move, I don't move. When my opponent moves, I move before that.
That sounds very Lao Tse. Sounds like from a quote from the Tao Te Ching or something like that.
Maybe.
But yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it sounds a lot in the same spirit. I used to be into that a lot when I was in high school. I kind of forgot about all the external ideas, though, with time. I also don't really listen to music anymore, which is something that I don't disclose very often because people think it's crazy. Um, because I felt that with my composition, if I was repeatedly playing albums that I loved, I used to listen to them so thoroughly that I started copying them. And then, well, maybe not exactly the same song, but the type, the style of composing, the chord structure, the harmonic progression, stuff like that. And then, like one time, I remember I was sitting by the piano and I composed a new song, which I really like, and I was thinking, but it sounds familiar. It sounds familiar. And then I made a mistake and I played the wrong chord, and all of a sudden it became a Cat Stevens song. So at that point, I thought, like, yeah, okay, it's time to quit listening to the artists that I like, and I haven't done that for. I think I stopped playing music when I was stopped listening to music. I mean, since I was 21 years old or something like that, and ever since it's been kind of. I listen sometimes, but not on a regular basis. Not even every week. Put a record once in a while, but once a month or twice a month. That's it. Do you listen to records?
I have things that I listen to for fun. I have things that I listen to because I'm trying to learn something, but not learn in the sense of copying, but again, absorbing something. I just bought a set of 10 CDs, old recordings of Piotr Gorski, cellist, who played with Jascha Heifetz and Rubinstein. There are things, sometimes I listen to a recording and I say, what do I like about this? What fascinates me about this? Why is it so eternal, this recording? Why don't other recordings sound like that? Why? So yeah, there are recordings which are far from being perfect, like today's recordings. You can actually, I tell my students, they hardly believe when I did my first professional recording, just came back from my master's, and the composer friend said, I wrote this concerto and I want to submit it to a composition competition. And we need to do a recording. I play piano. And we went to Jerusalem Music Center, where they have a beautiful hall and a beautiful recording studio.
Mishkanot?
Yes, Mishkanot. And they said, yeah, we can only give you this amount of time, and you have 3 edits. That's all you have. And editing meant physically cutting magnetic tape and splicing it together. So for the money we could afford, we had 3 edits on a half an hour contemporary concerto. That's it.
Good luck.
Yeah, and we did it. It was fine. Yeah. But nowadays, I can pick up one note, and I hate doing it. I hate doing it, really.
Yeah.
And I hate to listen to myself playing, so no, I'm joking. But
I have the same
problem.
No,
but then, like the recordings I send you with Camerata people and Avner Biron,
which I basically didn't manage to download because I needed access to the file. Still have to confirm.
You just write an email, and there's something you need to press, and I get an email, and I give you access, and it's fine. No, you didn't. I didn't get an email. I'm going to try that again. Okay, so we had, one rehearsal, 3 hours, one recording, 4 pieces. That's it. And then I had to, if I want a few edits here and there, it took me about 3 weeks till I could listen to myself playing. And then that's okay.
Yeah. And then what?
And then I did. We didn't do too much. I mean, just a few places here and there we replaced with another take, and that's it.
Sometimes it takes me a long time to listen to myself. And I can't say that I enjoy listening to myself, because then I notice all the things that I could have done better. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. A lot of a perfectionist.
Which most people don't notice. That's exactly the same feeling. sometimes even in concert, and I think, and then I listen to a recording of the concert and I say, well, I thought it was much worse. I thought this was terrible.
Yes.
And I even had an amazing thing with my professor was I played for him. I was already professional and everything, and I played for him, and he said, there's something with the timing. There's some slight problem with the timing of the bow, and I couldn't hear it, and I just couldn't hear it. So I recorded myself, and I came back to him and said, listen to the recording. And he said, no, the microphone didn't pick it up, but I hear it. And then 2 days later, I realized what he meant. And
Funny.
finally it came to me. Sometimes you see, you look at those pictures which are supposed to be three-dimensional, and it takes you time till you actually get it, that it becomes three-dimensional. That's what it
Magic
was with the record.
first.
So, yeah, the microphone didn't pick it up, but he picked it up, and later on I learned to hear it. I picked it up myself. So sometimes we're too critical about ourselves, and that's talking about career. That's very destructive.
It's true, because you tend to judge yourself by a standard you could never reach. Then you end up not releasing material or not advancing your career when you can, rather than limiting yourself to the confines of your own brain, which is a horrible thing to do. And then, at least with recordings, I solved it with doing live takes. So I don't do punch-ins. I just go for live takes, and then I choose the take that is the most emotionally true to the meaning of the song or the meaning of the piece. And then not the one that is most technically perfect, but the one that is most true feeling.
That's basically what I did with those recordings. That
Yeah.
basically with the recordings I sent you. That's what we did, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's something we kind of lose track of, right? Because in music, especially with classical music, I remember when I studied in the music academy. So there was such a huge emphasis on technique and getting to be the
That's
best.
because you can assign a number to it. You can
Yes.
assign a number to how fast. You can assign a number to how many mistakes.
Yes.
But how can you assign a number to elegance or to beauty? And I remember saying many times, why do you always prefer the people who play well over the people who play beautifully?
Yes. Because we are here to share art, and art is about beauty. It's about a
And
feeling.
about feelings, about beauty,
Yeah.
and yes, of course.
Yeah. If I
And
wanted a
we're about,
technocratic.
and it's about touching people.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I think technique is important, and I teach technique, and I practice technique myself, but I think we always have to remember the what and the why. We are playing to touch, to learn about ourselves and to touch other people.
And to share
That's
a
the reason.
message.
And to share a message. And I think as long as we remember that, everything else in the career will work. If we think about the career, we have to put it aside. I'm always saying the Neanderthal person who took two sticks and drummed on a rock was not dreaming to become the timpanist of New York Philharmonic. That was not his dream. He was expressing something, or she, and that's it. And that's what it's all about.
I totally agree with you, feeling wise and art wise. But if we're already touching the career subject, today, especially in our world, that everything is quantifiable. Like you said, you assign a number to everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to work because our currency is the money that we exchange. So if you want to dedicate your time to the art that you love, you have to make it also financially viable. So how do you make a career out of something that is so fluid and so entrancing, such as art? And this is also what this podcast is about: how to create more understanding within the music industry between artists and decision makers, so we can bridge the ever-growing gap that we have between those two populations, let's say. So you say you shouldn't think about the career, but in our world today, if you don't think about your career, you're doomed to failure.
Yeah, but it's a question of how you think about the career, and that's the post I sent you that I wrote many years ago about juggling. Because what I tell my students is that um, an artist's career is like juggling. There are three balls in the game all the time, and you have to keep them rolling. The goal is to just keep them rolling. And I'm leaving the personal ball outside the game. I'm talking just about career right now.
Yeah.
So if we talk just about career, there is one ball which is making a living. Then there is one ball which is your passion, why you do what you do. And the third ball is actually what we call career. That means your place in the food chain. And um, what happens that many young people who get out of school, they imagine that they can play the music they want, they can make a lot of money, and at the same time, that will take them to the next gig or to the next thing.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily so.
It's unrealistic.
It ain't necessarily so.
The things that you're liable to read
To
in the
read in the
Bible.
Bible. So, what I'm saying is sometimes, even at my advanced dinosaur age, you do a certain thing which you like, and it doesn't pay you anything. On the contrary, you might need to pay for it to happen, which is great.
Yeah.
Then you do a thing, you might be doing a thing which I remember one time, um, many years ago, an orchestra from Germany came on tour. It was Academy of Religious Music or something like that. And they came on tour to Jerusalem, to Israel, to play Messiah. And their bass player got sick or something. And they knew my name from things I did in Germany. And they called the president of the Academy of that time. They said, we want to play with Klinghoffer. And he said, outside the school, I'm not his boss. I can give you his number, his email. And I was pretty young at that time. And, having a family, a responsible person. And the amount of money they offered was incredible in Israeli terms. So I said, well, I have to move things around and I'll take the job. And I ended up enjoying it, actually. And actually, later on, I arranged another tour for them. But on the second one, I didn't play along. But it was I knew I was doing it because I needed the money. And the fact that I enjoyed the performance was a bonus. And then there's the career. There are things that you might not want to do them that much, but you know that if you do them, you can write them on your resume. They will lead you to the next thing, to the next important thing. And that will make it easier for you to take decisions whether you're accepting this offer or you're not accepting this offer. So the whole thing about career is something which is being neglected but we have to separate the three balls. We have to make sure that they're rolling and we take care of each one of them. And one time this one is on top and one time another one is on top. And if I have to make a living by doing something else, that's fine too. As long as I can keep doing I remember one time, again in my younger days, I came to a festival to play, and there was other artists there, and we were supposed to teach and play in New Hampshire. And as I came, I was introduced. This is Michael Klinghoffer, a bass player and conductor. And the cellist of that quartet, he said, you also got the virus, this virus of conducting, the bug? And I said, look, I like to play solo on the double bass. something has to pay for it. So that's fine. So I do it.
Well, you said that you envision the musician as juggling three balls, and one of them is the opportunities that come in, that you can make a decision which one to take. What happens if the opportunities do not roll in? What happens when
No
you have to
such thing.
create the opportunities for yourself?
First of all, you create them. And the second thing is, there's no such thing as the opportunities. The opportunities are there all the time. We do not always notice them.
That's true.
And that's something I argue with a lot of people. They say, oh, what a coincidence. I said, there's no such thing as coincidence.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. Coincidence are the times when we notice things, when we are, and if we are allowing ourselves or teaching ourselves to be sensitive, to be aware, then the opportunities are there, just like a lot of great things are there. Yesterday we had, talking about opportunities, Corona and Zoom, that enabled me as Vice President of Academic Affairs to create international collaborations for our students, meaning that I can have a class together with lecturers from another place and with students from another place. So my students get to meet other students, and it's great. So yesterday we had a class it's a course called The Anti-Method of Artistic Research. And it talks about the whole area of artistic research. And we're doing it together with the University of the Arts in Sibiu, Romania,
Wow.
which is a beautiful medieval town. And we talked about, they have a huge festival for theater and dance and music. And I was mentioning the fact that we want to develop in ourselves and our students the ability and the readiness to learn from everything. There's always something there. There's always something. I was telling a story about a festival I attended in Taipei. And each group had, like a producer, a volunteer. And there was a woman from Malaysia. She was a law student and she volunteered in the festival. And she took care of us and everything we needed. And I had to fly to Fukuoka. And my flight back was again through Taipei. And although the festival ended, they took good care of me. And she came to pick me up from the airport. And as I get into the car, there is a bottle of cold green tea for me. I mean, she was so perceptive. She noticed what I like. And I said, I want to learn this. I want to learn to see what makes people happy. I want to learn. This was a lesson for me. And I never forgot it. So if we learn to be aware, and if you read on my website, the life of an artist is about living a life, an artistic life is about sensitivity, awareness, and perception.
I totally agree with that. I teach a workshop now about social media for independent artists.
Yeah, that's what you wanted me to take.
Well, I think you could learn a thing or two, being a dinosaur, as you said. But then some of the students do not understand that exact perception that you just described. How do you get to know your audience rather than showcasing your own work? So people would normally boast in their talents and say, this is what I do, I'm special, you got to get to know me because I know something you don't. But connecting with audiences is exactly the other way around. Is that of course you have your unique view, but it's about a conversation. And if you don't create a conversation, if you do not describe them in your music, if they don't identify with what you have to say, you will never have an audience. And then posting, let's say with the hashtag jazz girl. Yeah, I'm a jazz girl. Will not get you any audience. But posting something with jazz lover would get people who love jazz to interact with your posts. And screaming at people with messages all the time, sign up for my newsletter, buy my CD, this is what I do, I know better than you, let me tell you how you do it. These methods are not going to get you anywhere. So let's have a conversation. What do you think about it? Introduce yourself to me. I want to learn about you. What did you feel when you hear my song? Is completely different set of
Agree.
skills that you can use to showcase your art and then also communicate with your audience. And that perception of learning what other people see or like or identify with is lost in this world.
Right.
Yeah. Something we have to bridge over.
Yeah. Seeing sensitivity is being sensitive to other people, to the world, to the planet, to you know, and awareness is more what's happening inside of us. What's happening to us? What's happening when I play this? What's happening when I produce this kind of sound? What's happening physically? What's happening emotionally? And perception is just making the impossible connections, the seeing things which are almost unrelated, and making some kind of abstract or concrete or impossible connection between them, and that's where good things happen.
That's intelligence. To make a new conclusion from two separate things.
Well,
That's the way I see it.
there, intelligence has many meanings. You know, there's the famous oxymoron, military intelligence.
There's no such thing.
Right.
That's about obeying stuff. That's not about
Yes.
producing your own ideas. But I love I take precaution with everything that tells me all the answers are in one book. Or I have all the answers. What do you mean you have all the? You haven't heard my question yet. That doesn't work that way. But people who tell me, let me think about it. I wanna mull it over. I want to sleep on it. These are the people I trust more. If they tell me, don't worry, I know it, I start to worry.
Yeah, I have a nice thing about this. You know, there's this joke. What's the opposite of forgetting? And they say remembering, and I say no, writing down. And then I say, and then I say, what's the opposite of learning? And they go forgetting, and I say no, knowing. Knowing is the opposite of learning.
It's true. Bob Dylan said that the artist is always in the state of becoming. So if you stop to evolve, you become flat. You're not an artist anymore. I really like that sentence because it really describes what we need to go through on a daily basis to be able to create something new. Otherwise, you're not creating anymore. You're just repeating yourself. A repetition is very dangerous, both in practice and in writing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were talking about the industry. I think, you know, we have, for example, open days at the Jerusalem Academy where incoming students who are interested are coming and we do a showcase. And I usually get to open those days and say, well, people probably have told you, why are you going to study music? There's no work, there's no money, there's no very difficult life as a musician, as an artist. And I say, well, one thing is, art is a world large enough. There is room for everybody, but only if you're not like everybody. Okay? So that's one thing. The other thing is, so that means you have to find who you are, find your voice, give room to your voice. The other thing is that things which exist today, like your online course or even social media, which I don't know much about, but still, there are options and possibilities that people will be interested in what you do. And after I wrote my book about double bass playing, I produced, there's a series of 18 videos, free, no commercials, just for everybody.
Yeah.
And I never, in my wildest dreams, dreamt that within a number of years, my YouTube channel will have about 500,000 views. Never in my life. So maybe it's not yet 500,000, but it's close there, close enough. And for esoteric instrument like the double bass, and classical music on the double bass, and solo classical music on the double bass, this is such a small, tiny niche
But this is
So
why it's successful. You have to find your
maybe
micro niche and define it to the extent of the most specific acronyms, because otherwise there are too many competitors. Not that I say, competition in general is fierce and not so good for you, but in order to stand out, you have to be specific.
I think so. I agree. And you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to learn all the time and learn more. But what I'm trying to say is that if one time in the old days when I grew up, if you did not have a manager, then you were lost. So nowadays, people can manage their careers and they can do things and they can, and I think going back to our first point is, are you doing it? I remember one interview I had with my university's alumni association. When I got the position of vice president, they thought it's good to interview somebody who succeeded. I don't know if that's success, but still. So they interviewed me, and they said, what can you tell young musicians? And I said, there is much more to music than self-glorification.
That's what you have to tell everybody who comes to a jam session.
Yeah. So as long as you're doing things which are also for the greater good and you're thinking not just about yourself, things will come and opportunities are there non-stop. But you have to be open for that, because I see a lot of students. I remember talking to one time this amazing electric bass monster, Victor Wooten. We had lunch one time, and he was like going, people tell me I practice 8 hours. I don't want to teach a person who practices 8 hours a day. What does he know about the world? I mean, what can I learn from him?
That's exactly what I said when I was in the academy. So I was I would go and I practiced in intervals of 1.5 hours at a time. So I would go and I would take a break, read a book, go to the library, talk to people, and then come back, do another 1.5 hours. And then people would see me a lot in the lobby. So they were like, what the hell are you doing in the lobby all the time? Why aren't you in the practice room? We practice 9 hours a day. We are so proud. Da-da-da-da-da. So then I said, well, hey, what is the story that you're telling when you're playing the music? You have to experience 9 hours to be able to tell about 9 hours. So what are you saying with all these practice hours? Even then, when I was playing classical music, it was weird to me to practice 9 hours.
And Arthur Rubinstein. I mean, how many great pianists are there or will there ever be? And he said he was practicing 4 hours a day. That's it.
There you go. That's it. I think that's the golden ratio. Like for me, 3.5, something like that, hours a day.
It's also different between wind instruments, string instruments. Every instrument is different, but still, just the idea of, I think practice is important. I think I think it's not how much you practice, but how you practice.
Sure.
And that's another art that has to do with career, because If you are just doing the same thing all over and over again, then that's not really practice. If you know what you're doing, talking about awareness, that will get you somewhere probably. But if you are just, repetition is important, and muscle memory, but it's dangerous also if you don't know what you're doing. If you're not thinking about what you're doing.
I used to notice that when I practice a phrase repeatedly, I don't really internalize the correct way to play it, but I internalize the wrong way to play it. So like I would maybe now if I have to tackle a phrase, then I would practice it 1 or 2 times, but then I will read the entire musical phrase or the entire piece together with that newfound mistake, rather than continue to repeat the same phrase again and again, and they will just magnify the mistake rather than fixing it.
I think also it's really important to put things under the microscope, meaning in my class we call it with my students ridiculously slow.
What's that?
Really playing really slowly so you can put in as much information and feeling from the very beginning. It's not that first you learn the fingerings, then you learn the bowings, and then you learn this, and then you learn that, and by the age you're retired, which I'm almost there. Not yet.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can retire. Too much
So
energy there.
So by the time you retire, you haven't played music yet. You only played bowings, you only played fingerings. So if you really practice slowly, then you can put yourself in that and actually discover new things about the same piece. And I tell my students, if I have to perform a piece that I've played before or conducted before, I take a new score, clean score. I learn it from the beginning.
Yeah.
I want to, because I'm a different person. Why should I play the same way I played before?
I agree. It's not the same water. It is the same river.
Not the same.
It's not the same water.
It's the same river. That's Heraclitus, and I think that what the deepest and the most profound meaning of this phrase is, and we learned it now with the coronavirus, is that the only thing which is certain, change is going to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But you know what?
That's the only thing.
The change comes gradually, and then suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't notice it creeping, but then you think, oh, everything's changed, but it's not true. It's been happening for a really long time. It's been happening gradually, and if you pick it up at the beginning, you can identify a lot about yourself, but also about the process of where we're going to. And history repeats. So like now, for instance, I see a lot of awakening, especially with young musicians, that is related to roots and heritage. So you see a lot of young musicians trying to investigate more about their grandparents' cultures and how they can incorporate them in the new world. I do that myself too. I started 6 years ago. I started doing Ladino songs. That's the language that my grandmother used to speak.
Beautiful. I heard some.
I'll send you the album. But then, the bridge of making this contemporary that you have to cross is to make it creative now. As now I was performing with these songs for quite a long time, but then something was missing. And then only when I started writing and composing in this new language, then it became new to me and relevant to what I do. So now I feel a more complete process, let's say, in the direction of this root searching, the roots digging thing, than it was before. As if it was incomplete when I was just repeating what was happening in the past. Now that I'm creating something new, then I feel more like an artist, like have a say in the process.
And because you're right, there is a music in the language itself. So now you are more connecting to the music of the language.
Yes.
And that's not only in the meaning, that's even the use of different syllables, different consonants, different, that makes the music.
Sure. That's with songwriting. If I teach songwriting, then a lot of times I see that people don't understand the connection between the rhythmic structure of the melody and the rhythmic structure of the sentence that you are trying to compose. So they say, okay, I will just prolong this consonant or this vowel and it will be fine. But you have to have a reason why you prolong this consonant or this vowel. What is the meaning of the musical phrase? What is the meaning of the song in its whole? What's the meaning of the sentence?
I do it a
What are
lot
you
with
building
classical
onto?
music. I do it a lot with classical musicians. I ask them to write a text. One time I did an improvisation class with Arab and Israeli students. I think there's even a little video on that. And I asked them, I took a round canon by Schubert, and I asked them to write lyrics in 3 groups, 1 group in English, 1 group in Arabic, 1 group in Hebrew.
Nice.
And I told them, the lyrics don't need to have any meaning. They can be total nonsense. But there is one rule they have to obey, and that rule is not to change the natural pronunciation of the word. So I'll give you an example. That very same round. As I walk, I'll give you 2 texts. One is good, one is bad. Okay? As I walked along to the meeting down here, I met a giraffe. He was drinking a beer. Okay?
That's good.
Now here's another one. As I came along to the meeting down here, I met a donkey. He was drinking a beer. Not good. Donkey. Nobody says donkey, you know? So I make people who play sonatas and, I make them, or I make them scattering Bach.
Yeah.
So the different choice of syllables will influence the articulation in the bow later on.
Absolutely. And Bach is amazing for scatting.
I know.
I would say to every jazz musician, especially singers, to scat Bach. Because I remember doing that when I was in a music academy. I would gather friends in the, like in the practice room, and we would sing either the fugues or the inventions just to sing them. So we can kind of get the phrasing, and it helps a lot with phrasing later on, with playing other instruments even. Not only
So this is important in terms of career. This is a very important point in terms of talking about career. How much of the time in the day, in the week, do you devote to your professional development? That is such a critical point.
Yeah.
And it cannot stop. This lifelong learning cannot and should never, never, ever stop. That means the fact that I reached a certain point or a certain job or a certain standard, I cannot forget 2 things I will tell you now talking about career. One is reliability, about being reliable. And the other one is about, I'll start with the other one. I came after I graduated from my master's degree. I spent 7 years here in Israel playing in the Israel Sinfonietta and at the opera orchestra. And I remember the deal was that I will come to audition for the Sinfonietta, and I will play. They needed an extra bass player for a production with the Royal Ballet of Swan Lake, so they needed a 3rd bass. Usually the orchestra had only 2, and one was supposed to leave, so they were auditioning. And the deal was that I will do the series with them as the 3rd player, and And if I get the job, in the meantime, I'll audition. If I get the job, then they will just pay me for the job. And if I don't, this is supposed to cover my flight back and forth to the United States.
Okay.
That was the deal. So we had a preparatory rehearsal with Mandy Rodan, who was our chief conductor.
Awesome guy.
Awesome guy. I just wrote his son today. That starting October, I will be in the place where his father, who actually raised me, used to be. So it brings tears to my eyes to know that it's just an amazing thing. So, but he did a preliminary double rehearsal. Swan Lake is like 2 books like that, and I was totally prepared. I was playing and watching him all the time, and I was shocked to see people who were in the orchestra for years who came unprepared to the first rehearsal.
Happens all the
People
time.
who were looking for the notes, and I was like, "What? How can this be?" So, really being prepared and being reliable and doing your job seriously. But I also remember a story about, um, life as a student in the United States, especially if you're an international student, an alien, as they say,
A legal alien.
legal alien in New York. I was in New Haven and then later on in Hartford, but I was a lot in New York and I played New York. But there were guys there. There were small orchestras in small towns, and there was a guy, Italian guy, Dante Gallupo, and he was contractor for a lot of orchestras. And for me, every little gig was, essential because I didn't have any money. And I finished my master's degree at Yale, and I came back to Israel. And 7 years later, I went to Hartford for my doctorate. Now, Hartford and New Haven are about 1 hour 15 apart. Same area, but still not the same city. And I never called anybody and never talked to anybody when I was in Hartford. I was already with a family. I swear to God, not even 1 week I'm in town, I get a phone call from Dante. Michael, heard you're in town, want to work? Just like that. So he remembered me. I'm sure there were better bass players than me. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the fact that he knew he could count on me, that I will show up on time, have my parts prepared, know my music, that was it.
It's true.
So if you're talking about career, that's a super important part. It's your reputation.
I experience that with a lot of musicians. Because I'm a solo artist. I don't have a band, so I hire musicians to play with me. So while I was on tour the year before Corona, we were 200 days on the road, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
cannot expect the 3 musicians to travel with you all the time. Everybody has something else to do, family life, whatever. So I ended up hiring 17 different musicians in different parts of the world just to get by to where the tour was going. And it was very clear that some of them were super professional, super reliable, and they got hired again. And some of them, even though we played 14 concerts together already, they still did not know the songs when they came to the 15th concert. And then that's a pretty red flag. Like even if it's the second concert, it's already a red flag. But sometimes you don't have a choice because you're in a country when you don't have other musicians or you don't know other musicians. You have no time to rehearse. But you have to kind of learn to live with a lot of things that happen on the road. And you also have to budget for things that get fucked up. You need a pot of money that says crap happens, because things are going
Mm-hmm.
to go wrong. And this is something musicians don't really understand. A lot of musicians that come to me for mentoring teach us how to make a career. So they think they can get out of music school and they want to earn already 400 euros per gig on their first gig, and they want everything to be done for them, and they want to come to the rehearsal and start reading the notes, and they leave their brains behind when they climb into the tour bus. So
Mm-hmm.
all this mentality maybe was possible in the 70s and in the 80s when you had this big corporate record label mentality, so they kind of pampered you and helped you out as a musician. But now you have to do everything yourself, and you have to wear 7 different hats.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can give a little bit of a perspective, because you did not you did of course tours by yourself as a musician, but you also arranged and produced as a promoter and as a conductor and as a composer. You've arranged groups. So from your perspective, what would you give musicians? What kind of, well, grain of salt? I wouldn't say advice because advice is complicated, but what would you say to these musicians, how they can keep up with touring life, in a few sentences?
I think, first of all, here's where the fourth ball in the juggling comes in, and that's your personal life. You have to make decisions. In the past years, I've been touring a lot before Corona, and before that, I was limiting myself because my children were young, and I felt it's more important that I'll be with them. This is my first priority, as much as I can. Maybe I'm not the perfect father, if there is anything
Who
like that,
is?
perfect parent ever,
Yeah.
but I felt that there is only so much I can tour and do things. The other thing is, again, it's much easier if you need sponsoring, crowdfunding, things like that. It's much easier to raise for a greater good, for something which is greater than you. So I've had, for 7 years, I've had a young orchestra. You can see videos on YouTube. And we did a lot of things. For a young orchestra to do 15 concerts a year is really great. And we did 2 full stage opera productions, and we toured twice within those 7 years. So we took care of our business. We had the help of the parents. We had the help of, we did one time a crowdfunding campaign, because we wanted to tour the country and to get to places to bring music for people who cannot have music, homes for elderly people,
Yes.
far towns, young people who do not, or are not privileged to live in the center and have an orchestra. And actually, next week I will have 3 days of music camp with a young orchestra in the south, which during Corona, most of the schools in the south, music schools, closed down.
Yeah.
All the teachers were fired. So we're going to have a music camp for them. And I'm, I don't need any money for that. I'm doing it for the love of it. And somehow things happen. Again, things happen. And for the orchestra, we got money. And for the south, we found some solutions. So I think if you're only thinking about yourself, then things will not happen. But if your goal meets something which is greater, bringing joy to people, I was talking after the Corona and saying one of the most important conclusions is culture may be shut down. Art cannot be shut down. Culture is is for the consumer. Art is for
Product.
the artist.
I agree.
So nobody can stop me from practicing. Nobody can stop me from creating or writing new
Yeah.
arrangements or doing other things. But, um, but, okay, so there'll be no shows this year, or less shows this year, or whatever. That's fine.
Yeah. You can also reinvent yourself and do things online. I've done a lot of online concerts. almost as many as I would have had without Corona live. I didn't make the same amount of money as I did with live concerts, but at least I connected with new fans that otherwise wouldn't be able to come to my concerts. Like I've gained audiences in Turkey and in Mexico and in Asia that the countries that that I never toured before, and these people are now connected to my music, and I didn't have access to them before. So at least you do produce some benefit from adjusting to the
Situation.
limitations of your time. Yeah, like sometimes even the limitation brings something beautiful. I was
Yeah.
once invited to play on TV here on this late night show. It's called The Night Kiss, the Nachtzoen, and
Mm.
it's like it's an interview one on one with anybody. It's not doesn't have to be a musician, but if you are a musician, they also invite you to do a song. And then I asked, well, is there a piano on the set? No. Can I bring my e-piano, my electric piano? No, it will look ugly. That's what they said. So bring a guitar. I said, well, I don't play guitar. Okay, then you have to find another solution because we won't allow you to bring the e-piano. I was like, what do you mean? And then I was stressing out about it for 3 days. And then I thought, well, hang on. I have to find something else to do because I do want to sing a song and I don't want to do a cappella. And then I remembered that a friend of mine brought from Zimbabwe this little instrument called mbira, like a kalimba but larger. It has 2 sets of keys, and it looked like the keys on it looked like a piano. So
Mm.
having that memory in mind, I called her up and said, I remember you brought something like a thumb piano from Zimbabwe. Can I borrow it for a gig? And she said, well, come over tomorrow at 9 o'clock, pick it up. The night before the gig, 9 o'clock in the evening, I'm picking up the instrument. At 10 o'clock, you're supposed to stop playing because of the neighbors, right? So like for 40 minutes after getting home, I was sitting down and I made a new rendition to one of my songs.
Mm.
Now we went live on this on TV, and this thing blew up. It became a viral video. Like within the night, it accumulated a few 100,000 views. And that limitation made me have a hit single all of a sudden, which was like, so sometimes if you think outside of your comfort zone, you end up with an even better result than what you intended to.
Well, they said that creativity is creating within limitations.
Yeah.
Limitations are helpful. I remember my composition teacher at Tel Aviv University when I was a student, Andre Haidu. And
Oh, wow,
before he,
what a guy. You know all the
yeah,
amazing guys.
I know all the amazing guys. I was lucky.
Yeah.
I, I was lucky. And before before he became a composition teacher, he was teaching us a class. And one winter day, we just showed up 2 people to the class and said, let's improvise. And he started the improvisation with each, and then he made us improvise together. And then he made some kind of a psychological analysis, telling each one about their character. And it was amazingly accurate. And
Nice.
I can't tell you how accurate he was. Even till today, even if I try to change and fight what he told me then, I cannot. It will
What
never
did he tell
happen.
you?
He told me that the way I feel time is very Eastern, like it's endless, but the intensity is Western, and that's very dangerous. But this is my life. This has been my life. On the day of my graduation, I got my diploma from Yale University. I got on the shuttle to the airport. The next day, I played the audition for Mendy Rodin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my life story, and this kind of intensity, but over a long time. There are no breaks there. However, what I wanted to say, the first exercise he gave us, only improvise on the piano with your left hand.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand it, but later on, as I became a teacher myself, I realized people feel insecure if they don't have some kind of boundary, some kind of limitation, some kind of protected area. So this was kind of a false limitation because you can play anything with your left hand. But the fact that you can use only your left hand, you feel like he limited you, but he didn't really limit So he was extremely smart.
Yeah, sure. It was very inspiring. Him
And
and Mika Zakai were like a formidable combination.
I know. She passed away.
I know.
Very sad.
I have a few stories about her. We
Me
need
too.
another conversation.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But like what you said about this two dual types of thinkings that you do, because if you read the questions that I've prepared to this questionnaire, this interview with you. So the first question, I didn't ask you yet, but maybe that's a good time to ask you. It says, like, I really love your energy because it's two-dimensional. It has this cool and collected vibe that you like keep on keeping on. And then at the same time, you have this curiosity of a child that you think like, oh, I'm so enthusiastic about that. And that reminded me that what you said now about Andre Haidu, when what he said to you, made me think about the question that I wrote that I wanted to ask you. So it's interesting. We don't know each other very well. And we didn't meet for what, 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
And it still stood out for me in your personality from that short conversation we had when I was 18. So it's interesting.
What? What is interesting?
That the distinction that, you know, even though we don't really know each other very well, that I picked up on that energy, this two-dimensional aspect of who you are. So I think that's interesting.
Of being an eternal child, that
But both, right? Like being a child and being cool and collected like an adult at the same time. So it's like what you said. You have the timeless. Well, what Andre Haidu said, that you have the timeless feeling of time, like in the East, but the intensity of the West. It actually boils down to the same thing. So it's that intense energy.
Never thought about it, but probably never thought about it this way, but probably yes. I think the curiosity and the wish to learn and the energy that keeps me going, and I think it kept me going through very hard times in my life, really hard times, and it was also the very good times in my life. I remember somebody telling me, I did 2 postdoctoral projects at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and I remember one of my friends from school. We met. He said, "I'm amazed that you always come back for more learning, for more doing, for more projects, for more." I can't envision it differently. I mean, and that's the other thing I tell the students on those open days when I tell them that there's room for everybody, only if you're not like everybody. There's another thing that
it's like what
there's another thing that I tell them. I tell them when I was as poor as can be, and today that I'm okay. I'm not rich, but I'm okay. No complaints. I still think about one thing. How many people get up in the morning and they're happy to start the day? How many people have jobs that they come up and say, oh, I have a great day today. I have those great students coming up. I have to prepare for a concert on Sunday. I have to do this. I have an interview with Noam. And how many people get up in the morning excited for the day, for what's going to happen on the day? I'm going to run tonight or I'm going to run in the morning. So basically, you know, things happen. Some people are nicer, some people are not nice. In every place, every workplace, every job, every university, there's a joke about a person from Harvard who had awards and, you know, was very famous for their research. And he became, he put his candidacy for the Congress. And I said, a person at your age, with your status, what do you need that? And he said, I don't need that. I'm just tired of politics. So
that's the way to go. It's
So
my husband.
every place.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No,
My
go ahead.
husband is a filmmaker, so every time
Mhm.
we watch a film, he complains about the quality of everything that is going on. So then I always tell him, "It's your fault. Why don't you make another movie? It's
Right.
your fault. We're watching this."
So there's things happen, but basically the fact that that one does what they want will also create a good career. If I do something which I love, which I'm enthusiastic about, which I want to explore and learn and find new directions and find new ways to do things, then somehow career will happen.
Well, happiness is something you make. I think it's not. It's not an external thing, and it's not a state of mind. Also, like people strive towards a goal to be happy, but it's not the place. It's not nirvana. It's not a place you reach and you just constantly stay there. It's something you have to be your own dynamo for. You keep on
Well,
igniting it.
my dynamo is anything I do to do 1% better every day.
That's a lot, 1%. Just a little bit.
That's my dynamo. That's my dynamo. 1% better every day.
Yeah, for I don't. Yeah, I don't see it in percentage, but I do think like remember that like when you're a kid and you go to these touristic places and you have this well or a fountain and people throw money at it and make a wish. So they say you
Hmm.
should put something in a fountain and then you make a wish. And I remember like people around me asking for a Game Boy or whatever, something, a toy, or to be rich or something like that. And I remember as a kid asking to be a better person, which is like at that time didn't sound weird to me at all. Today, when I look back and think about that weird 6-year-old kid asking, "I want to be a better person," I think like, what the hell was going through my mind? What did I know then that I don't know now? Because sometimes you develop, sometimes you go back.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of things we have as children and we lose them. And I created a graduate forum in our school, and I bring in really top people to talk there, and scientists and really international figures. I have then our next lecture is with the president of the Wingate Institute that trains Olympic players, and he's a sports psychologist. And
Nice.
we will talk about the similarities of performance between performing of athletes and musicians and dancers. But basically, we have a subject every year, and our first subject is called unlearning. Each lecturer, from their point of view, has to relate to this topic which I created, which is called unlearning. What do we need to unlearn to become better people, in order to become better artists, in order to become physically better? You know,
That's the exact process I went through after graduating music school. I felt like I had to unlearn to play music and sing
well,
because
this is in my mission statement. I want to make you as less creative as possible. I want to make the students here as just kill their creativity.
yeah. And then you work on technique for a while, and then you have to forget everything you've done. And it's the same process that I do when I go on stage. I practice at home, the practice is in the practice room, and when I go on stage, I forget about the practice. I just express whatever is needed to be expressed.
So unlearning is again one of those things you have to deliberately think about. When you're doing something and something goes wrong, or what do I have, not what do I have to learn in order to do it, what do I have to
Yeah,
unlearn in order to do it better?
yeah. My teachers at the academy were always mad at me because I would come to the lesson. I would have something prepared, of course, but I'd do it in a way that they didn't 100% agree with. And they were like, "Yeah, but you have to sound like this." And I would say like, "Yeah, but I don't like it. Like it's not what I'm aiming for." It's like, and then they would ask me, "Why do you come to the music academy? Why do you want me as a teacher if you don't want me to teach you?" I said, "Well, I want you to teach me, but I want to learn this in order to later on be able to do whatever I want with it. So the teaching is not, I don't want to copy anything. I just want to learn all the palette of colors that I can use, and then I later on want to make my own painting.
I tell my students, don't copy me. I don't like myself enough.
Yeah, exactly. You said before that you have to be your own thing, right? Like because you have to be unique in order to stand out. And that brings me back to Oscar Wilde, because I have it, one of his quotes, a friend of mine gave it to me for my birthday because it's my favorite quote. And it says, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. I think it sums it up.
Yeah, I guess so.
I have a fun part for you as well. So that's like the serious questions time, let's say, that we took. But I'm kind of paraphrasing on the Bernard Pivot questionnaire at the end of the conversation with each of my guests. And you know it probably if you did watch the Actors Studio. And it's a series of 10 associative questions. So you're supposed to answer with the first thing that comes to mind. But don't worry, I'm not strict. So if you want to think about it or give 2 answers, it's also fine.
Okay.
All right. So what is your favorite word?
Love,
What is your least favorite word?
hate.
You're like John Lennon.
Thank you. That's a compliment. It was worth coming here.
I agree. What turns you on, creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Creatively.
No, but what? What turns you on?
Oh, what turns me on creatively? Discovery. That I discover something suddenly.
Yeah. Some people call that inspiration. Yeah, discovery, I think, is a better word. Yeah. What turns you off?
Mediocrity.
I agree with that. Unreliability and mediocrity. Yeah. Yeah.
Mediocrity is worst. Let me tell you why. Because when something is mediocre, some people might think it's good. When something is bad, it's bad. When something is mediocre, some people might think that's good. But it's not. It's worse because it's misleading.
You know what Tom York said about, what's the name of that band? I forgot the name of the band. The guys that sing Yellow. Anyway, it's like very mainstream music. And then he said about them, it's lifestyle music. And this is like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's not about creating something new. It's not about creating anything valuable. It's about creating mediocrity. And then some people think it's good. And I think people also don't recognize when you bring something to the stage with your performance, they don't know when it's genius or when it's good enough. The distinction between amazing and good enough is almost not apparent. It almost doesn't exist.
I don't know how much time we have, but there's another subject we need to talk about, and that's the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle.
Yeah, I heard of that.
It's very important,
for business, but important, like originally for business, right? That 20% of your customers will pay for 80% of your work.
Yes, and so on. But the big mistake is that they tried to apply this principle to education, that 80% of the 20% of the effort will bring 80% of the results. So if you take an average child at school, he only has to, or she has to only put in 20% effort or knowledge or intelligence to get a grade of 80. And for us as artists, it takes 20% of effort to bring a song to the stage or a piece of music to the stage. But most of the time we spend should be on those last 20%, or as the Chinese say, 90% is less than halfway.
It's true.
You know?
I never heard that before. I totally agree.
And that's where our main, talking about making a career, spend your time there in those 20% 80% of your time. And I ask people, what do you think happens in those 20%? And they say, inspiration, ideas. And I say, no, blood, sweat, and tears. That's what happens there. But if you don't go those extra 20%, you'll get nowhere. You'll just be mediocre.
You have that with artistic ambition. So if you ask people, especially young musicians, what is your goal? What do you aspire to? So they say things like, I want to create beautiful music that will touch people. What is the ambition? What are you doing? Everybody wants to create great music that will touch people. But why is that unique? What is the story? What are you trying to portray? Well,
you have more questions?
I have so many more questions, but
no. But you said you have 10 questions. I think
yes,
we only did 3.
Yes, I do. This is a good one. What is your favorite curse word? You can say it. Don't worry.
Fuck.
Yeah, a lot of people said fuck. A lot of people and shit as well. But fuck has this unique oomph to it. You know what I mean? Shit is too soft.
Yeah.
Scheiße is good in German.
Mm.
Scheiße sounds, yeah, it has the
Merde. Merde.
Yeah.
Oui. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. That's embarrassing.
No, it's not. It's good. It's a part of you. What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of the bass. I love the richness of the sound. I like the sound that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I'm trying to teach. I love the sound that actually touches, because I feel there should be expression in the very sound. Even before I start playing a melody, just the sound should be expressive. And I have a few idols, except for my own teacher, but if I think of singers like Victoria de Los Angeles and Coleman Hawkins on the saxophone. Listen to Coleman Hawkins from 50s, 60s.
I like
really?
Coleman.
Yeah, but the sound of Coleman Hawkins is, I like Ornette Coleman too, but the sound of Coleman Hawkins is, that's what I'm saying, that the expression in the sound, I like the sound which touches you, even if there's no melody, just the very sound.
Ben Webster has an amazing sound.
Right.
And this vibrato that he does on the air, not with a full note, not with a full tone. That thing's very special.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you hate?
Music? No, just joking. No.
No, I'm kidding.
No. I actually, there is, when I do improvisation classes, sometimes I send them out to pick up sounds from everywhere. And you can turn every sound into music. And if you're in the shower, then you hear the water. But at a certain point, I can feel how the sound of the water distills itself into a pitch. Suddenly it becomes a pitch. And I know it's only in my imagination, but suddenly it turns into a pitch, into a color, into something. So I don't hate sounds, no.
Well, they say that the natural sound of nature, like the wind and the leaves and the trees, is F sharp. So I don't know if it's true. I don't have perfect pitch, but I do recognize pitches, so tones in certain sounds. Yeah.
It's a psychological question of cognition, if it's in our mind or is it really there.
I think it's,
but anyway,
I think it's probably a combination of both, because it's the same when we look at objects. We always tend to look visually for a face. We always reckon, oh, this cloud looks like this and this tree trunk looks like that. We always look for a shape that we know, especially face. We want to recognize eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're attracted to eyes. So what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I wanted to be an ambassador once.
I think it suits you.
Thank you. that's what once I wanted to. I want to be a philosopher. I want to be Dumbledore.
You are a philosopher. Yeah, I want to be Dumbledore too. No,
You're
I
too
want to be
young.
Hermione. But or Snape. I think complex features is complex characters. Yeah, is more my thing. But I remember once a friend of mine. She's a physics. She used to be a physics student, and one time during a lecture, she said that that the teacher he was inserting something on the board, and the students were talking and interrupting. So he turned to the class and held his, I don't know, the thing that you point on the board with. Is that a wand? Like a wand.
Wherever.
He held it in front of a class like a wand, and he said, "Do you know what would happen if I were Harry Potter now?" What profession other than your own would you not like to do?
Banker.
Yeah. Accountant. That would be fun. Not. My favorite question is the last question. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you enter the gates?
Peace. Shalom. Peace. In the deepest sense of the word. Of the word. For the world. Yeah.
Yeah, so you are John Lennon.
Wannabe.
Well, yeah, fake it till you make it. You are a delightful person to talk to. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
So are you.
Sharing your info and, musings, really. Let's do it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And come again. You're welcome anytime. If you want people to know more about your stuff, you can put some links in the comments, and so people can know where to find you. And if you have any closing statement, this is the time.
No, I don't think so. I think we've said it all.
There's a lot more to be said, but it was a good, concise call, I think.
Thank
Good
you.
talk. Yeah. Thank you so much for your patience and your time, and for bringing something new to the table.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. See you very soon.
Bye.
Take care. So, thank you so much for joining me on Music Career Radio. As you know, YDIY Music offers scholarships for independent musicians. So, if you want to register, go to ydiymusic.com/scholarship and submit the application form. All donations to this podcast will be used to help young musicians get a proper education. So please visit ydiymusic.com/donate and make your contribution if you would like to support young musicians. And you could also send a direct PayPal transfer to paypal.me/Noam Vazana. Next week, Thursday, March 23rd, I'm going to speak with Dr. Vladi Dvoris about the ABCs of setting up your own independent business. So in the meantime, I hope to see you next week. But in the meantime, don't forget to keep calm and DIY.